Okay, welcome to FM Facebook Live. We've got a great show for you today. And we wanted to start off with just reminding you of your two most valuable things that you will ever possess. That'll be your ideas and your time to carry them out. So today we're going to gain some great ideas, and we're going to start to have hopefully lots of time to develop in the future. So if you got these ideas early, there's a lot you can do with them. Okay, so again, we're going to be feeding the pipeline today with those ideas. So we're taking step one to learn it, right? When you get back in the pool or you get in other situations, depending on what it is that we're focusing on, you can start to fix it, right? And then you get back to practice, you cement it, do it over and over again, and then you can use it when you're in a race or in a competition. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to recommend is that you go, and during the week, this week, you can do it later today or during the week. You can go to FM Discovery Center. And the way you get there, you go to fluidmechanics.net, click on FM Online Training, and then you go in here into the FM Discovery Center. And inside there, you can type in my 3 recommended videos or topics that you take. Again, they're about 5 minutes or maybe even less in some cases. But you want to take MR versus MPR. Those are fantastic. It'll really help you understand how to expand your energy system. This is phenomenal. So when you're training in the water in practice with your team, right, this will show you the mindset to have to start to develop. That'll be great. Then this is a fantastic thing. It's a great thing for anybody at any day. 5 sharks in a boat. These are all global concepts here. 5 sharks and a boat. So type in, just sharks or something like that, and it's going to pull it right up, and you can watch that video. Again, it'll help you. Next thing is why drills don't work. Not only don't they work, but they're never going to work, and it's going to explain exactly why. When you come out of that video, you go, yep, drills don't work, and this is why. All right, and it's going to explain the whole thing. Okay, next, we're going to go in here. We're going to orient ourselves as to where we're going and where we're starting from. So this is your map, right, of the cornerstones of athletic performance. We're going to go in there, and we're going to be going in today, and we're going to be taking a deep dive into technique, and we're going specifically into the hydrodynamics cornerstone, or I'm sorry, the technique cornerstone, into the hydrodynamics topic. And we're going to start to learn for something that's really been kind of elusive over the years, and one of the most important aspects ever, which is called the feel for the water. So that's what we're focused on today. We're going to dig in, and we're going to reveal it, unveil it, and show you what it is. Here we go. So again, going back we're in this category. So if you're looking at our dimensions, we're not in structure right now. We're in hydrodynamics right in here, talking about how you and the water work best, how to get the most out of that relationship. Then over here, you have force. Today we're not dealing with force, although this is a really big deal, and I'll talk to you about it in just a moment. And then also timing and the dimension of blending. We're here today zooming in on hydrodynamics, the most significant relationship inside the water. Okay. So today's presentation, we're going to clarify the confusion about the water. We'll show you what the confusion is, and we're going to clarify it so you understand it. Next, we're going to understand pressure fields and how they work and how you can work with them to get more out of your swimming. And then we're going to reveal how to get better traction on the water. So that's the basic 3 things. Clarify the confusion about the water, understand the pressure fields, and reveal how to get better traction in the water. Okay, so here's the feel for the water. And one of the things this says here is a lot of people haven't defined it. We're going to talk about that in a moment. But let me define it for you at the outset, right now. That's the ability to create, recognize, right? So you create the pressure field, you recognize that it's there, and then you manipulate the pressure fields in the water. All right? So if you don't know they're there, you're going to have a hard time actually dealing with them because you don't even know they're there. Okay, so here's the confusion that I see. So starting off, Doc Counsilman had a fantastic Discovery of the Decade breakthrough years ago. He had 2 of them, and one of them, as we talked about last time in the hydrodynamics, the umbrella of this program, which what he discovered was how acceleration impacts athletes. I don't think it was discovery of the decade just in the world of swimming. I think it was the best discovery in the world in sport, because you accelerate in throwing, kicking, running, right? It's just a fantastic discovery on how that worked. However, in swimming, without the understanding of hydrodynamics, I think it falls flat, because you might accelerate but not have any traction. It's like running on ice and just slip right there. And we have lots and lots and lots of swimmers that display this type of and they're in this category of what we call throwing slippers, and we'll talk about that in a moment. And that's not the slippers you have that your dog gets you at home, right? It's slippers in the water. We'll discuss that. So hydrodynamics is it has to support, right, the acceleration. If not, and you don't have that relationship, it doesn't work. So the next step is we're going to describe the feel for the water, right? So let's talk about, when we look at it, a lot of times people are having trouble. I'm going to adjust this camera a little bit. Got to see if you can see that. Oh. There we go. All right, we're going to adjust that camera. Hopefully that's a little bit better for you guys to see it. Okay, great. Let's give it a shot. So a lot of people describe the feel for the water when they're talking, a lot of coaches, things like that, and they say that basically you're either a talented swimmer or you're not. So they describe, oh, this guy has a feel for the water. That's why they're doing a little bit better than the other swimmers. However, I don't really think that's it. I think it's their misunderstanding of how to explain, or even maybe not understanding what pressure fields are themselves. So we've got to look at pressure fields and try to get an understanding of what they are ourselves, and then we can communicate them. So again, describing the feel for the water as talent is pretty much just pushing it off, not knowing how to tell your swimmers. Probably just frustrating for them. Like, they want to let their swimmer know what's happening. Is, oh, this guy has a feel for the water. Let's describe it. Now, what I noticed recently, not too far back, I saw a popular online website for swimmers that said this: no one can define the feel for the water. You tell me at the end of this at the end of this program if we can define the feel for the water, or if it's just a common term saying we don't know exactly what to say on this. And that's what we really want to do, is clear it up, because this is a major thing for swimmers. Most swimmers also, if you ask a swimmer, how do you get down that pool? In fact, parents right now, or swimmers, ask yourself right now, coaches, ask your swimmers, what makes you get down that pool? Because we hear a lot about streamlining in the world of swimming. We don't hear a lot about propulsion. Propulsion is really important. And I don't know how we miss some of that. We really want to make sure that everybody kind of understands that more. So swimmers, a lot of times, can't tell you how they get down the pool. It's just like a massive motion in their mind. I just do this, and I do this, and next thing you know, I'm down the pool. We need to know how and why to get better at it. Okay. So that's basically the confusion we have. And it's all communication coming into us, isn't talking about the water and how it works. Because a lot of times we were missing that understanding. We weren't taught that by our coaches years ago. So here we're going to learn a lot about how to solve the mystery of helping someone begin to start to gain the feel for the water. So the first thing is we got to start off with a really great foundation. We don't have a solid foundation. A lot of times we were taught that people float, and you were being taught how to float in your swimming lessons, things like this. Right from the beginning, we're given information that actually isn't correct. So people, let's say this, people don't float on average. And here's why. See, bone and muscle sink. They're more dense in the water. Fat, which is less dense than water, floats. So unless you've got a lot of body fat, you don't actually float. The only thing that makes you think you float is because you lie in the water, don't move at all. Take a big breath, just lie there, don't move at all. The first thing you're going to notice if you wait there long enough is your feet are going to start to sink, and your legs. The reason why your legs are sinking is there's no air in them. But your chest seems to stay up. Any idea why? bet you do, right? Chest is full of, it's got your lungs in it, it's full of air. There's no air down in your legs, it's all in your lungs, right? So if you just keep staying there, don't move at all, and start to blow out. Blow that air out, you'll notice what everybody else notices, is unless you got a lot of adipose tissue or fat, you're going to start to sink, the whole body. You'll continue to sink downward as you allow that air to go out. So because we don't float, then how are we staying up on top of that water? It's not just that we're filled with air that we stay on top of that water. It's because we're riding on pressure fields. So pressure fields are underneath you, right? That's what's holding you up, right? You can see that underneath the swimmer here, over here. And that's why when you lie here, you disperse that pressure. When we talked about hydrodynamics, why people can water ski, right? And they can't just stand on the water, right? So it's you're putting and spreading that across that water, and as you push on the water, right, you start to gain a pressure field. We'll discuss more about how that happens. So if we start with that concept that people don't float, and in competitive swimming, we don't really want to float anyway. We want to race. We want to go fast, right? So we're going to go fast, and we're going to use those pressure fields to drive us. So we need to understand pressure fields. So water has a property, real basically. You know, you push on it and it pushes back, right? So it has a tendency, right? You push down, it pushes back. And right where you push on it and it pushes back, you get an increase in pressure called a field of pressure, or what we call a pressure field, right? So this is the best, right, that we've been able to kind of draw out what our ideas on that. But you can see them yourself. Just go in the water, turn your hand up like this and push upward. Don't break the surface, just push upward. And then to that point, if this is a surface, and you're going to see the water kind of expand above like this. And so it's kind of neat, and you can start to play with those pressure fields, and that's really important. Most times you don't have time to play because you got to work out, but you want to play. This is where you start to get to know something. All right. So next thing is, one day I was swimming in Indiana, and I was swimming in practice, and Counsilman was on the side of the pool, and everybody's working out hard, and I'm kind of playing with the water while I'm swimming and pushing down on it and changing the way my angles are in my hands, and I pushed on the water in a specific way, and I stopped. I jumped right there. Oh my gosh. And I stopped in the middle of the pool, right? And I was right in the center of the pool, and I stopped, and I looked at the water, and Counsilman was like, "Hey, John, what are you doing there?" I said, "There's something in the water, Doc. It was so heavy." And he says, "Yeah." He says, "I think it's the water." I said, no, there's something solid in there. He says, yeah, let's keep going. Ready, set, go. Start working out. So I did that, and I pushed on it again, and I held my hands tight like this, and I pushed down on it like that, and it felt so pressureful, I felt like I could stand up on the water and run. And so I did. Just joking, I didn't. No, but I could stand up I felt like I could stand up the water, and I started to push down on this with my hands. And as I did, I started to move forward. And I said, you know what if I could push on the front of this to make me go forward? And so I kind of worked my arms around it, and I started to push. Again, you have to hold your hands tight, not too tight, but you want to search for this. And you want to have a certain position on your hands. And it was so good, next thing you know, I was beating all the other swimmers in practice. Even, just going down the pool, just not working too hard, I just started beating them. And I dropped 3 seconds that week in my 100 breaststroke by pushing off, right? And I was pretty fast at that time, and I think it pushed me up in the top 10 in the world. So, or it had a great contribution towards that, right? So if this makes sense, I held my hand a certain way so that there's something in the water. It's in the water now, even though we're not in there. So it'll be in there when we get in there and we start pressuring, right? The water itself doesn't have pressure fields until, something moves it. So you got to develop that pressure field, right? It's got a property. You push on it, it pushes back. Start looking for that. So that's a really important factor. Now we're going to talk about Psd. Now Psd it's called a Psd Quadrant. You can see it here. There's 4 pieces to it. That's why it's a quadrant, right? We're going to discuss, and this is going to get you a clear picture of, first of all, just the basics. We're going to define it. Then we're going to sweep back through a few times to really understand it. And then we're going to talk about the emotional aspects of PSD, because this has a massive, massive effect on how you perceive yourself. And then we're going to look at the fact that this is not just for swimming, although it's probably best described in the world of swimming, but this is a global concept. It's not just about swimming. It's about everything. So let's start off, and we have PSD stands for push-off slippers and drifters. So let's learn about what S stands for. That's right up here. S is a slipper. Now you might ask, what's a slipper? Or if you're throwing slippers, right? What does it mean to throw a slipper in swimming? So every stroke has a PSD stamp on it. Every single time you take a stroke. All right? And if you throw a slipper, I'm going to show you a little picture here. We'll come back to this picture again and again here. You see how the hand and the arm is on the top of the pressure field? Right here. Then watch what happens when he pulls back. He's slipping like this. He didn't get on the front of the pressure, he's slipping. And next thing you know, he has very little push off. Can you see the slipping on the pressure field? So that's if you put your forearm and your hand in the horizontal plane, you're going to slip if you pull back. Now it's really easy to accelerate because you're not pushing on anything. So it's really light and easy. So you'll get fast motion, right? Which is how you move your body parts, your head, your torso, your leg, right? And you're going to try to trade that for movement, you moving forward. You're going to get fast motion, but you're going to get very, very low movement. Let's look over here, and we're going to go back to this, and we're going to go down to D, which is the drifter, okay? So over here in drifter, see what they're doing? Right? As the pull begins, it does not, right? You didn't build a pressure field. You just kind of put your arm in and pulling it back, and you're actually not really dealing with pressure fields, but you might even have your arm this way, right? So that it's straight up and down like this, but you're not pushing on the pressure fields. You're just kind of following them back. See how it kind of follows it back all the way through. And there's nothing really to push off of at the end. So therefore, the body doesn't get a lot of movement forward. Then we go to the next one, right? That's PT. And that's, right, so P stands for two things. PT, which is push the object. Push the object, and PO, which is push off the object. So PT, push the object. The swimmer's done almost everything right. Look, arms on the front of the pressure field, but their intent is different. They start to push back, and then they really try hard to throw the water backwards. Right? Can you see that? They're trying to throw that water backwards. Because a lot of times a coach will say, if you push on the water, right? They're using the action-reaction, right? I believe that's Sir Isaac Newton, right? And he says, for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So if you push water backwards, so that's good physics. If you will push water backwards, you'll go forward. But I'm going to say something that's not very prophetic, but I think it's true. If you push water backwards, water will go backwards. You may go forward, but water is going to go backwards. So the idea is your intent is a big deal here. What you intend to do with that water. And I'll show you a little bit more in just a moment. But right, so in this case, the intent is to push water backwards, and therefore, but you don't really care where the pressure field goes. You don't care if you were in lane 4 and all of a sudden the pressure field's gone over to lane 2. You don't care. You care where you go. And this makes all the difference, is your intent, what you're thinking about. So what's on your mind is changing how you move. So that's PT, which is the focus is wrong, and they're thinking about where that water goes, because a lot of times we might send the wrong message. As a coach, you might have said, oh, if you push water backwards, you'll go forward. That is generally a true statement, right? Action, reaction. But we'll discuss it in just a second. In fact, let's discuss it now, even before we move on. So take a look at my hands here. And this is called hub 1, which is my shoulders. So if I'm trying to push the water, Notice where my hub is pushing and leaning this way, pushing things that way. So I push the water. Now look at how my hands are formed. See these little points? See, right? You can almost see a rim around here, right? And I'm pushing the water. And my intention is to drive the water, because my intent is to drive the water, because maybe somebody told me if you push the water backwards, you'll go right the other way, the opposite way. So push it backwards, I'll go forward. So now watch this. If we go to PO, PO is push off the water. This is very different. See that? PO. We're up here in the quadrant. And so in PO, you're not trying to push the water this way. Your intent is to push off the water and move yourself. So I placed my hands in a very different, right? In a very different way. So we're not saying that Sir Isaac Newton wasn't right. We're saying if it's a different action, then there's going to be a different reaction, right? Equal and opposite reaction. So if I'm pushing this way, and notice where my hub is going that way, it's driving me out of the picture in this case, right? It's driving me in the opposite direction. So I'm going to put my hands like this, I'm going to push, and now I'm going to drive, right? And I'm driving my body, so I care where I go, and I'm driving my body that way instead of caring where the water goes. That's me starting to take the benefits back to myself instead of giving them to the water and the pressure fields. Normally, in this one here, and push the object, you're going to get some of the benefits, but you want to take more of them, right? You want to get a better return on your investment. So in this case, if this makes sense, I'm going to go back here real quick to the Psd Quadrant, right? And you could tell you would want to be more on the left side of the quadrant than the right side. Right? So these guys are going to get more back. So let's go back and take a look here. And we're going to see a little bit about what you get out of this. So in this case, we've got the slipper, remember. Okay, now the slipper, that's the one up here, upper right. The slipper is going to get a high energy input. These guys are working hard, but they get a low return. They don't get much of a paycheck. They're working hard, but, and our mantra in swimming is work hard and you'll do well, right? That's what we work hard, right? Hard work equals fast swimming. And I always say fast swimming equals fast swimming. It doesn't mean don't work hard. You have to work hard to support your efforts. However, if you don't realize that it's not work, but performance, right? So if you're at work and somebody says, hey, I'm your hardest worker, great. You're my hardest worker, absolutely. And Jim is getting paid more than me, right? But Jim is producing 400 times what you're producing, so I'm glad to give him a bigger paycheck, right? And he says, okay, I'll work twice as hard. That doesn't work. Right? If you work twice as hard, it doesn't necessarily pay off. We need this to pay off. You're trying to get somewhere. You're a high-performance swimmer. You want to get to college and swim. You want to win the next big race. You want to travel, become famous, right? Possibly go into international swimming. Then you need to really understand this. Okay, again, energy, high energy in, and low return. And the harder you work in this case, and I'll show you in a moment, the more you'll slip, the more tired you'll get, and the less performance you'll get. Let's go back here. There we go. And now we're going to look at this guy who is the drifter. In the drifter, he's going to put low energy in. Remember, he was just kind of pulling back with the water. And he's going to get a low return out. Right? And so he's not putting much in, not getting much out. So the coach can easily say to them, "Hey, guess what? You know what? It's you get what you kind of put in, right? And you don't put much in, you don't get much out." Here we're going to go to, and this is right, the push the object. And the push the object is going to have a high energy. These guys are all revved up. right? You're going to have high energy input and a middle return. They're not going to get the big returns. Does this make sense? So the coach is kind of in love with these guys. They're like, look, you know what? Because these guys aren't getting the return. They're not quite as good as what they call the talented swimmers because they got the feel for the water, right? They're just, right? They're getting a moderate return. But we don't want a moderate return. And these guys don't deserve a moderate return, but without that understanding, and if we can't give that to them, right, then that's a tough time for them. So the return, we need to get a better return from that, if you can see that. And that's because their intent is off. They're trying to do exactly what the coach told them, and everybody's working in good faith here. And they're trying to push harder and harder on that water to drive that water backward. But that's not what you want. Now here comes what they call the talented swimmer. Remember, it's the ability to identify pressure fields and manipulate them to your advantage. Right? This is it. So these guys in the push off, look, energy could be moderate to high. If they put in higher energy, they're going to get a better return. But their return is going to be high. And that's a talented swimmer. In a way. But the really big thing is they know how to deal with pressure fields and drive themselves down that pool. And you notice they come in all shapes and sizes. And so, right, you have this energy in, which is moderate to high, and the return is high. So now we're going to go back just for a second. And we're going to watch this from a different standpoint. Let me see here. I'm going to start off with this swimmer. Who is this person? This is the push off the object. Notice over here, we got 60%. They're getting a 60% ratio on push off. They got 10% on slipper, 10% on drifter, and then they get 20% on push the object. Who are they? That's one of the most successful swimmers in the world, right? They're getting massive movement forward, and they're absolutely fantastic. So this person is calm, relaxed, getting a big paycheck. Everything's going great. Let's go back over and look at this one. All we do is switch that top number, right, from 10% to 60%. Can you see that okay? Okay. So we got, now this person's, right, and is a slipper at 60% slippage, 10% push off, 10%, right, they're down in the drifter, and 20% in what we call push the object. This is one of the most frustrated swimmers in the world, right? They're working so hard, but they're not getting anywhere. And you can really feel for this swimmer. They want it so badly. We'll talk about it in just a moment. Then you go to the drifter. This is, hate to say it, this is probably one of the most lazy swimmers in the world, or they don't think they can do it. And so therefore they don't, and we have seen this a lot with kids where they just don't try sometimes because they don't feel like they want to be embarrassed that have tried but not to have succeeded. So 60%, right, we move that number down there, 60% drifter, right, they get 20% or 10, 10, and 20. So they all have a stamp on it. And it's this for each stroke. So sometimes we all throw a slipper. Everybody, even the best in the world, throw a slipper once in a while. But how much you get for return is such a huge deal. I can tell you, I threw a slipper in one of the top races ever in the world that I ever swam. And I threw one slipper in that race and dropped from second place to fifth in one stroke because that everybody is, at that point, so well connected to the water. Generally. Okay, and then here you've got push the object. Now this person is all revved up. They've got something to look forward to. They're trying to get up to be like, you know, the fastest swimmers. So they're kind of close, but they're not there. Right? And you can see you've got 70% down here in push the object, 20% up in push off. And then you've got 10% and 10%. Right? Maybe, can you see that? That's better, maybe. Okay. So that's basically what we're dealing with in there. And this person's all revved up. They're excited, right? And they're trying to help the other swimmers. So they tend to be leaders, right? And they tend to be connecting well with the other swimmers. And so what you get as you go is you end up with a very emotionally based series. Remember, we're emotionally based, and humans are emotionally based beings. It's not our logic, which is so fantastic, that drives us. It's our emotion. The reason why people swim, the reason why people do anything, is based on their emotion, their needs, at their gut level, who they are, right? Deep in their subconscious. So let's watch a little story here about Jimmy. Jimmy is a swimmer, joins a team, and he's never maybe been great at anything. He gets in there, and he's starting to become a swimmer. He's so excited. He does, he's keeping up. He's put lots of energy in, and unfortunately, he's an S slipper, right? And the coach recognizes that Jimmy's working so hard. He loves, wow, that's really fantastic. And so Jimmy starts swimming harder, getting better. Now he gets in a race, and Jimmy goes absolutely nuts in the race. And because he's slipping, he doesn't get much of a return. He doesn't go very fast. The coach comes over, hey, Jimmy, I know you're working really hard. You're doing great. And he said, well, I didn't get, I got like, 6th place out of 6. That's okay. Keep it up. So he keeps it up. Next thing you know, he starts going to meets, and he's not really progressing at the same rate as the other swimmers that he wants to be like. And next thing you know, the coach comes over and goes, Jimmy, here's the problem. We need to really, and this is what's going on. And he's trying to help him. He says, we need to work harder. Oh, okay. I thought I was working hard. No. You got to work really hard. Now, if you worked really hard, you could be a little bit more like Max, because he's a team captain. Oh man, I'd like that. Right. In another few years of hard work, you're going to be like Max. So we're going to go that direction. So Jimmy's all excited. He goes back. He's going to work really hard in practice. Next week or so, he's working. Right? Goes to a swim meet. And now he really lets it fly. And his arms are moving like this, right? Lots and lots of motion, but not much movement. And he stinks up the pool because he got tired at the end, right? And he doesn't have enough energy. And the coach comes over, hey, Jimmy, come on over. Look, that was okay. That was not too bad, but I went slower. It's okay. You've been working hard. It'll catch up. You'll get there. Right? You're trying to explain this to the kid because you're feeling terrible about this. Oh, okay. He says, but you really got to work harder. Okay, I'll keep it up, coach. No, don't keep it up. Let's work harder. Not hard, but harder. Okay, you got it. So he goes back in the pool, and he is working for 2 weeks, nuts. He's ready. He's coming up. He's huffing, puffing. He's ready. Don't worry. You'll adapt. It'll come up. Goes back to the meet. Now, when he races, I'm going to have this, right? And he tears it up. And he gets exhausted. He's so tired. He comes out of the pool. He's huffing and puffing. He swam slower. At the end, he just died, right? The piano fell on his back. Coach says, come here. Now, Jimmy, let's have a talk here. He says, I thought you liked what you were doing. Oh, I do like what I'm doing. Okay, well, you got to try hard in there. I was trying, Coach. Yeah, I know, but you got to really try in there. I'm going to have a talk with your parents. So he gives a call to parents. And so now you're bringing in the parents into this, right? And so now the parents have a talk with Jimmy. He said, Jimmy, I thought you liked what you're doing. Oh, I like what I'm doing. I love it. Well, the coach says you're not really, doing everything you need to. You're going to get working hard. Oh, I promise. I'm going to work hard. I love this. All my friends are there. I'm a swimmer, Mom. Great. Off he goes. Next 2 weeks. Starting to see what's going on. He busts it for 2 weeks. Man, there's nobody that's working harder in the pool than him. Comes back out, swims a race, might even go even slower, about the same speed with lots more energy. Coach comes over. Come on over. We're going to have a meeting with you and your parents. We really thought you liked this. Now all of a sudden, hey, I'm trying hard. They say, not trying hard enough. Jimmy reads one of two things into this. Number one is there's something wrong with me because I'm a swimmer. This is what I do. And he says, there's something wrong with me because I'm not good at it. Or he says to himself, oh, there's something wrong with my parents and this coach because they don't know how hard I'm working. They don't know me. And he's in this independent stage probably anyway by this time. So they don't know me. I'm working hard and they don't know it. So it's almost better that he gets that feeling that he thinks something's wrong with him or wrong with, right? But it's a very, very tough experience for kids when they're a slipper. And as I mentioned, this guy down here, that's usually the coach just really wants them to get a bigger return. They're a good part of the team. They're contributing from a swimming standpoint. They're not quite there. These guys tend to be the talented swimmers. They get the biggest paychecks. And this guy down here is kind of hanging out for a couple reasons, possibly. Possibly because he doesn't think he can do it. He doesn't, or he's too embarrassed to try and possibly fail. Or they just like to take it easy. But generally, you don't want to be in swimming if you're just taking it easy. That's not normally a sport for somebody who wants to take it easy, right? So that's not normally. So if you got a kid that's not in there really giving a lot of try, they may not understand this either. So what is it that's causing this whole psychological process here? By the way, a lot of times these guys here can be also ostracized in a way too by being very good at what they do, and sometimes you'll see like jealousy and things like that. But when it comes down to it, folks, we're all brothers and sisters here. We all spill the same blood in the same mud, right? We all have done this, right? That anybody watching this show, I'm guessing you've been in the swimming world. You've done this. You've worked hard. You've had people that outperformed you. You had people that you outperformed. You saw people struggling. But we're all a big family. I realized this a long time ago. Everybody here, and it doesn't matter what level you're on. We've all worked hard. We're working hard together. We're and you see them later in master swimming. It really shows, because when you go to master swimming, and you're later in life, and you sit down and you got the Olympians sitting down with the guy that just got into it, and everybody's just eating dinner together and racing and having fun and helping each other, right? And it's just a wonderful experience later on. It's more about probably the food and dining out and things like that, but it's a social, as much as swimming is a sport that's kind of alone in some ways. We're going back and forth down the pool. You have such an important component where everybody's together. That's fantastic. Okay, here we go. So the next step is getting traction on the water. So when we look at getting traction on the water, right, this is the ultimate denominator. Okay, and basically everything is ultimately denominated. All the work on your brain, your technique, your strength, your in-water training, right, your fuels, all that work that you do is ultimately denominated, right, by your pressure field, your relationship to that water. So if you got everything else just right, and you were slipping at a 50% slipper, everything you did has to be denominated by 50%. So you've worked on your brain, you've worked on strength, things like that. It's all been denominated by whatever your slippage ratio is. Now, this is a global concept. So it's very, very important to understand that basically, if you've ever seen this before, you've probably seen this happen here, as I mentioned, in what's called, right, when you're seeing somebody that's kind of like a push the object, right? And you see that in all kinds of different worlds. You'll see it in every sport. You'll see it in school, where kids just get it easily. Other kids are working so hard and they're not getting it. right? So this concept, other people, no, I'm again, you got the same psychological, emotional issues on that. And then on the final one, you'll see the ones that are really, really trying, not quite there. They don't quite get the return they're looking for, right? So we see that in the business world. You see it in the dating world. You see where, somebody really, really wants a date, but just doesn't know how to get that. And other ones where they can get a date, there's no problem at all. It's very, very easy for them. So this is in different aspects for different people. It's situational. But it's a very important factor. This is a global concept. So gaining this relationship, again, the ultimate denominator, and it's best explained, I think, in the swimming world. So let's talk about what's called a pressure field reaction force. So when you push on the pressure field, you're trying to gain more support. So you create the pressure field, then you try to manipulate to get to the front of it, get the relationship you're looking for, like he does here. And then next thing you know, you're going to start to push on the pressure field. And what that's going to do is going to start to what's called stack the pressure. You're going to gain support for what you're doing. You're going to get better and better and better and get a better relationship. And then at the end, you're going to push off that pressure field and use it to get what you want, right? So you develop that relationship and then you use it to get what you want. So as you push off the pressure field, the idea is you want to get what's called a pressure field reaction force, because this is an opposing force. I'm pushing backwards, the idea is to try to go forward. And what you want to do is grab as much of that reaction. So the pressure field, right, the force that you're applying backwards is now pushing back into your body, and you're becoming the object. You're trying to drive yourself down that pool and thrust yourself down that pool, right? So as you push back on that, if that relationship starts slipping, things like that. So as you pull through the stroke, you can have a variation of your angle, things like that on the hand. And then you can start slipping again. You can lose that whole thing that you sought to gain, right? But the idea is to continue to get as much of that return from that pressure field, right? So if the pressure field has low return, it's going to move more. But if you've made it solid, you're going to move more. And not only if you've made it solid, but if you push off of it and have that tendency of the intent to drive yourself down that pool, you're going to gain that movement forward that you're looking for. So that's called a pressure field reaction force. You can see more of that if you go on our website at fluidmechanics.net, go to the Discovery Center, right? And go in the FM Discovery Center, and there's a whole thing on pressure field reaction force. And it's great. It'll help you a lot. So the idea is to build a better hydro relationship. And we found something that is so interesting. Number one, I'm going to actually switch these around. Number one is, I didn't realize this when I was swimming, but I started to get this when I was working with swimmers for years. And one of the things that we recognize is that when you use a hand paddle, right, when you slide your hand in those paddles, if you're a swimmer, you can feel it already that your hand stiffens up. Just in reaction to putting your hand, the thought of putting your hand in the pressure, in the hand paddle will make your hands kind of stiffen up a little bit, getting ready to put them on. Well, a lot of people don't know this, but hand paddles are a great teaching tool. It's just not to add pressure, but you want to help people understand what they're trying to learn. If you notice when you pull with hand paddles, you get a lot more pressure, you get a lot more movement. It's almost sometimes, depending on the size of the build of that hand paddle, it's almost too much to handle sometimes. You can even get injuries if you're not careful. Well, that's actually telling you how to hold your hand, right? It's stiff, the paddle. And right, if you had like a soft paddle, it wouldn't work very well. So it's stiff. By the way, I don't know if you knew this, but I read a little while ago that hand paddles were actually invented. I'm not sure if this is true, but it seemed very interesting. I think they were invented originally by Benjamin Franklin. I'm guessing he had probably some wood and put it. Very interesting, but I think there's a brilliant man, right? So anyway, so you put those hand paddles on, and it's showing you how to hold your hands. Now, if you notice when you're doing that, your hands kind of get like a little cramped, and you want to kind of take them out. right? And that's what, if you've wearing them too long. But yeah, so that's where you're getting that pressure, right? And that's how you hold your hand. So when you take your hand out of the hand paddle, you can mimic that hand paddle, and that's a good start, right? And that's going to start to give you a lot more pressure on the water if you hold it stiff like that. But then the next step is what we went to, and we saw what's called the heavy spot. And I started thinking, I had a swimmer that they had kind of a relaxed demeanor, and he was kind of loose all the time. And so what I did, he was a 200 freestyle, was like a 158, 157, 200 freestyler. His sophomore in high school. And then what we did was we had him do what's called the heavy spot. And the heavy spot, you push your hand kind of like this. And what this does, I know there's going to be some slippage with it, but it's worth it to start with anyway. You put this like this, and what it does, it tenses your hand up. So you pull it back like that, and it tenses your hand up. So all of a sudden, the water gets a better relationship. You get a better relationship with that water by doing what's called the heavy spot. So the heavy spot is like right here. It's also the spot you should have in your hips when you're swimming, is that heavy spot, right? This is your body. But anyway, so you build the heavy spot like this, and then when you do, you get this great relationship with the water. So we tried that with him, and he pushed all the way back with that. And guess what? The next time he raced, this is very interesting to me. He went from 157, I think it was, somewhere in there, 158, something like that. Anyway, his next swimming was 141. He actually came back to us for our MindWorks brain after that. He's like, I'm not that fast. He says, he says, I just beat all my heroes. I'm a sophomore in high school and went 141, 200 freestyle from a 157. That's a big drop in one race. Anyway, so we had him doing that with every stroke. It's just a tremendous difference. So now I tried it with other swimmers, and I found the exact same type of thing. They all got better right away. So holding your hand stiff, but not too stiff, and making sure you got the right angle. Again, this will cause a little bit of slippage, but it's so worth it to get started and to start to understand it. They can always bring it back a little bit so it's not quite like that. Very, very helpful. Okay, so today, what we want to take away from this is we've clarified the confusion about water, hopefully, right? Because there's a lot of communication that's confusing. Hopefully you understand about pressure fields more, and specifically the Psd package. If you get to explain that to a swimmer, you can use this show or some shows to show them. It'll really help, and it'll help them get better traction on the water. And that's what you're really trying to do, is get better traction on that water. And then building your strength will pay off. Otherwise, the ultimate denominator will cut all that work down. Right? So all that you're doing, the push-ups, the sit-ups, all these things, with the in-water training, back and forth in the pool, if you don't take time to get to know that water and engage with it, then you're not going to have a good relationship with it. And that kind of goes with anything, isn't it? You got to spend time. And it can't be just back and forth, endless laps in the pool. Okay, now, I got a really cool thing here for you now. So, in this case, if you want to be an FM insider and you want to see our new video we just came out with, it was just sent up to one of the top organizations in the world actually yesterday. So you'd be one of the first persons to ever see this, right? So see our new video first. Email right now to swim@fluidmechanics.net, and we will send you back a link to watch that video. It is really cool. It's about 3 minutes, but everybody, they said, the group that we turned it into said it was the best video they've ever seen on this particular information. So again, just say swim@fluidmechanics.net. Please send, I want to be an FM insider, and please send the video link, right? And we'll send it right out to you. Okay, it's question time. All right, so I've got 3 questions here, one from a coach, one from a swimmer, and one from a parent. So the first one is from a coach. So how can I afford the time to work on this issue, right, the hydrodynamics issue, when the other teams are all training? Great question. So if you want what everybody else has, then do what everybody else does. But if you want something different, you have to feel differently, think differently, act differently, and then you'll become. It's called the process of becoming, right? And it's called FTAB. Feel it, think it, act it, and become it, right? So if you feel like a king, you might then start to think like a king. You'll act like a king, and then you could become a king, right? If you feel like a bum, you'll think like a bum, you'll act like a bum, and guess what? That's right, become a bum. So the idea is to feel it first. That's the most important, your emotion. I can do this. I haven't started thinking down the process, the logical side of it, but I feel like I can do this. That's the most important because that drives intent, right? So you feel it, think it, act it, and become it. So endless laps, as I mentioned, are not the solution, right? Going back and forth in the pool doesn't nurture a better relationship with the water. So if you value your relationship with that water, right, that's really an important thing, then I would spend some time with my swimmers getting that, and you'll see a massive improvement. Just to give you an idea, I got a quick story. Years ago, we were at a swim meet, and we had put in an advertisement in the meet program at that time, and it said, got 10 seconds. And it was a story about another time we were at a swim meet. And we're doing an advertisement, and this woman came up and she said, "Oh, I heard you guys are consultants." I said, "Yes, we are." And she said, "So can you give my daughters? I have 2 daughters. They're going into the race right now. Can you give them some advice?" And I said, "Sure." When are they racing? She says, "In about 2 minutes." Okay, let me try it. I said, and I said, if you push faster here in this area, up in the front of the stroke, you'll swim slower. But if you push harder back here in the back of the stroke, you'll move faster. It's a law of physics. So pull faster here, you'll slow down. Push harder back here, you'll speed up in the back of the stroke. So thanks. And she took off. Well, anyway, guess what? Both girls came back. They swam the 50. They were young kids. And they had dropped between 3 and 4 seconds in their 50. She says, "How did you do that?" I said, "What?" And she said, both my girls just dropped huge amounts of time. She said, "Do you have any idea how long it would take to train them to do that?" She says, "Thank you so much." So anyway, I got a call. I was home, and this guy was telling me, he's sitting in the sand and says, "I got to tell you this. These are true stories. I got to tell you this." I said, "What's that?" She says, "I was just reading your story in the program. And I told my daughter, give it a shot. Why don't you try that hard? Push hard back here. Don't move your hand fast up here." And he says, she went right in the race. And I'm sitting here watching this. She's in the water right now, mouthing, "It really works." She just dropped huge amounts of time. "Thank you so much." He says, "If I was working with these guys, I can't imagine." He says, "Because I'm reading this, and my daughter, I told her to do that, and she dropped huge amounts of time. What happened if we were working with you?" Yeah, I think it would help a lot. So just an interesting thing. So I would recommend, if you can, it's okay not to follow the herd, but to do something that you feel would be really valuable. Spend that time with your swimmers to understand water and gain that relationship. It's not okay not to train, but a little piece of your time could be spent helping them understand the water. Would be huge return for you. Okay, now the question from a swimmer. As a swimmer who is experiencing slipping, where do I start to solve this problem? Okay, great. Number one, you need the time to engage your mind with that relationship. So as I mentioned, getting in the water and trying pushing the water up, things like that. Move your hands back and forth in the water like this, and then move them like this. You'll feel a difference between slipping and starting to gain pressure. So that'll help you recognize, oh, okay, and what you want to do as a swimmer is to gain pressure. If you hold your hands tight, or if you do what we're talking about with the heavy spot, right, you can start to really kind of feel that pressure. Then the next step is you want to push, maybe take 2 hands, push on the water, and see if you can push yourself and move yourself. If you can do that, and then try to measure how far you're able to move yourself. So I take my feet off the ground and push and see how far I can move myself. You're starting to get the idea, like, oh, I got to hold my hands differently because I'm trying to, and that goes back to intent, to move myself down the pool. So you got to measure how far you move from that place, and then next time try to beat it. Next time try to beat it, get farther and farther by changing the angle of your hands and the relationship with that water. Okay, from a parent, my team doesn't offer this. How do I begin helping my daughter with it? This is very common. Don't feel bad. Most teams don't offer this. That's why we're doing the program on it. But I have to say that years ago I was coaching out in California, and I had tremendous background with Doc Counsilman's training, things like this. And I was coaching, and while I was coaching, I was trying to get everybody like the personal attention they needed, and I didn't quite understand this process yet. Now I got it really clear. So I had 3 swimming pools, right, and in different areas, and then I had 250 swimmers about. So it was not a huge team, but it was a good starting team my first year with it, with that team. And I started to realize if I lined every child up and I got them all to one pool and I gave them 2 minutes each, there's no way I would have enough time to work with each swimmer. There's no possibility of that. So no matter what kind of knowledge I had, I couldn't get everybody the personal attention that they needed, right? It just wouldn't work time-wise. And I said, wait a minute, then how do I get to them as a coach? And so basically, it's basically one of the reasons I started this business is because I think every child needs between an hour and a half of private one-on-one time, depending on their age and their needs, a private one-on-one time once a week to keep feeding that pipeline, right? Keep feeding new information so that you can learn it, fix it, cement it, and use it. Without that, they're going to kind of, the information that they have is going to get stale because they're just working on the same thing over and over again. And it needs to be personally tailored to them. And there's no way a coach has that time. I know I didn't. It's just that the time doesn't exist. So I wouldn't expect to get that that one-on-one, because if they're working with your child, you're very happy. But if they're working with somebody else, you're like, hey, aren't you supposed to be running the practice and helping my children? So anyway, what I would recommend is get them into our hydrodynamics class. We offer that. If you can't find it as a group session, then do it as a private one-on-one with our consultants, and that'll help them tremendously. So if you have a swimmer that isn't quite getting the return they want, get them into work with somebody that's really knowledgeable about this, and you'll normally see a big difference. Okay, let's see here. So next week we're going to do the FM energy systems. It's fantastic. We're actually it's just coming out. It's got brand new shows, and there's something special next week too that's going to be included with that program. So make sure you tune in. So this is going to tell you how to get more out of your team's workout. So when the coach puts that workout on the board, you'll know exactly what you're going to do. You're going to go at it, and they'll never have to tell you to work harder because you know exactly what to do and what you're trying to get out of it. So that's a really great thing. Don't forget to invite all your friends and teammates so they can see this is really worthwhile. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time on FM Facebook Live.